Welcome back, everyone, to the deep dive. Today we're taking a look at a book that really challenges how we think about success.
Mm.
Um, it's called Quiet, The Power of Introverts by Susan Cain.
Oh, yeah, I've heard of that one.
Have you read it?
I haven't had a chance to read it yet, but it's definitely on my list.
Well, it's really fascinating. And Cain, she spent a decade on Wall Street as a lawyer and negotiation consultant.
Oh, wow.
And she saw firsthand this kind of this pressure to be outgoing and charismatic to really climb that ladder.
Yeah, that whole extrovert ideal thing that she talks about, right? Like
Yeah.
you gotta be the life of the party. You gotta be
Right, exactly.
super social all the time.
And she kind of pushes back against that and says, wait a minute, there's another way to be successful.
Yeah.
And she really digs into how our institutions, from schools to workplaces, are often designed in a way that favors extroverts.
It's true. You think about it. Open office plans, group projects, like everything's about being, out there and collaborating.
Yeah.
Which, collaboration is great, but it's like we've forgotten that some people need that quiet time to think and to process.
It's almost like we're missing out on the talents of those quieter voices.
Exactly. And Cain makes a really compelling argument that this bias can actually stifle creativity and innovation.
It makes me wonder, is there a scientific reason for why some people are more extroverted than others? Like, are we just wired differently?
Well, that's one of the things I find so fascinating about this book. Cain actually delves into the science behind introversion and extroversion. She explains how it's rooted in our biology,
Oh, wow.
specifically how our nervous systems react to stimulation. She talks about this researcher named Dr. Jerome Kagan, who studied high reactive infants. These are babies who, react really strongly to new sights and sounds. And you know what? They're more likely to grow up to be introverted adults.
Oh, interesting. So, like, some of us are just naturally more sensitive to stimulation than others.
Exactly. It's like we have different thresholds for how much we can handle before feeling overwhelmed.
Yeah.
And Cain calls this optimal levels of arousal. Introverts tend to hit their optimal level with less stimulation than extroverts do.
It makes me think about that party I went to last week. It was so loud and crowded, and I just felt my energy draining away. It's not that I wasn't having a good time, but I just needed to get out of there.
Yeah, yeah. And that's a classic example of how introverts and extroverts respond differently to social situations. It's not about liking or disliking people. It's about how you recharge. Some people recharge by being around others, and some people recharge by being alone.
So it's not that introverts are antisocial. They just have a different way of socializing and recharging.
Right. And this is where we get into that misconception that introversion equals shyness.
Yeah, I was just going to say, because people often use those terms interchangeably.
But they're not the same thing. Shyness is about fear of social judgment, whereas introversion is more about how you respond to stimulation and how you recharge. You can be a very social introvert, It's just you might need some solo time to kind of process everything afterwards.
That makes sense. So if introversion is partly biological, are we just stuck with our temperament?
That's a great question, and it's something Cain grapples with in the book. And while she acknowledges the role of biology, she also introduces this really empowering concept.
Okay.
She calls them free trade agreements. And basically, it's the idea that we can choose to act out of character when it's in service of something we deeply care about.
Oh, so like you're saying, we're not necessarily limited by our innate temperament. We can stretch ourselves when it really matters.
Right. Like, say you're an introvert who's super passionate about animal rescue. You might find yourself, giving a presentation at a fundraiser, even though public speaking usually makes you nervous.
That's a great example.
Yeah.
Because the passion kind of outweighs the discomfort.
Exactly. Your passion is like a driving force. But Cain also stresses the importance of what she calls restorative niches. These are the spaces and activities that allow you to, recharge and return to your preferred state after you've kind of pushed yourself outside of your comfort zone.
So it's like finding that balance, right?
Yeah.
You can stretch yourself, but then you need to kind of come back to your center.
Yeah, exactly. Find those things that help you recharge.
So now let's talk about something that a lot of introverts, and probably some extroverts too, struggle with.
Yeah.
Public speaking.
Oh, yeah. Public speaking. I know.
Jane actually dedicates a whole section of the book to this. And she even shares her own journey of overcoming stage fright.
Oh, really? Interesting.
Yeah. So what are some of her tips for making it less, terrifying. Is there a way to actually enjoy public speaking?
Well, one of the things she suggests is to reframe the experience. Instead of thinking of it as a performance, she says, think of it as a creative project. Focus on a topic you genuinely care about and connect with your audience authentically. It's more about sharing your knowledge and insights, not putting on a show.
That's a good point. So it's not about being perfect. It's about sharing something you're passionate about.
Right.
What about, for those of us who just really dread the spotlight no matter what? Like, what if you absolutely can't get out of a public speaking situation?
Well, in those cases, Cain suggests what she calls a mental escape.
A mental escape.
Find something that brings you a sense of calm, like a happy memory or a favorite piece of music, just something to kind of create a little mental sanctuary to help you manage the overstimulation.
So it's like having a little escape road in your mind. I like that.
Yeah.
Now, switching gears a little bit, Cain also delves into relationships between introverts and extroverts.
Oh, sure.
I imagine there could be some communication challenges, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Different communication styles.
She uses this example of a couple, Emily and Greg. Emily's an introvert who dreads dinner parties, while Greg, he's an extrovert, and he loves them.
Classic example.
Yeah. And, these differing reactions can lead to frustration if they don't understand each other's needs.
It's like they're speaking different languages almost.
Yeah, and it's not just about social events. It can be, everyday things, too.
Makes you wonder how many arguments are actually rooted in these differences.
Yeah, like think about work environments. The open office trend, while, intended to foster collaboration, can actually backfire by overstimulating introverts and making it hard for them to focus.
Yeah, it's like we're constantly bombarded with stimulation.
Yeah.
So, I know a lot of people assume that to be a good leader, you have to be an extrovert. But is that really true?
That's the stereotype, but Cain really challenges that assumption. She highlights research showing that introverted leaders can actually be more effective than extroverts in certain situations.
Well, that's interesting.
Like, they tend to excel when managing proactive employees, while extroverts thrive with more passive teams.
So it's not about being one or the other. It's about understanding your strengths and knowing when to use them.
Exactly. And Cain gives some great examples of successful introverted leaders throughout history. Figures like Rosa Parks, Eleanor Roosevelt, even Warren Buffett.
All very different people, but all known for their quiet determination. I mean, it really makes you rethink what leadership looks like.
Absolutely.
I love how this book challenges so many assumptions.
Yeah.
It really makes you question everything you thought you knew about introversion and extroversion.
Yeah, and it raises a lot of questions, too.
It does. You know what? Why don't we take a quick break and come back to discuss some of the more practical aspects of Cain's work, like, how to navigate work and relationships as an introvert and how to raise introverted children.
Sounds good to me. Before the break, we were talking about those successful introverted leaders.
Like Rosa Parks and Warren Buffett.
Right. And it's so inspiring how they achieved so much through their quiet determination.
Yeah, it really makes you think about, those conventional ideas of leadership and how maybe we need to broaden our perspective a bit.
Exactly. Cain really emphasizes that it's not about trying to become an extrovert, but rather understanding and leveraging your introverted strengths.
Like, what are some of those strengths?
Well, for instance, many introverts excel at deep thinking, problem solving, and creative pursuits.
Those are valuable assets in any field, really.
Absolutely. And remember, we talked about those restorative niches earlier.
Yeah, those spaces where you can recharge.
Right. Cain highlights the importance of creating those spaces for solitude and reflection, even amidst the busyness of life.
So it's about finding ways to replenish your energy.
Precisely. It's easy to get caught up in the hustle and bustle and forget to take care of our own needs.
I'm definitely guilty of that.
Well, you're not alone. It's a common struggle in our always-on culture.
So what are some practical tips for incorporating those restorative niches into our day?
Well, it could be something as simple as taking a short walk in nature, listening to calming music, or even just sitting in silence for a few minutes.
I love that just those little moments of stillness can make such a difference.
They really can.
Speaking of challenges, one area that I know a lot of introverts find difficult is navigating the workplace, especially with those open office plans.
Oh, yeah. Cain is not a fan of open office plans.
She makes a pretty strong case against them.
She argues that they can be incredibly draining for introverts who need more privacy and quiet to focus.
So what's the solution?
Well, one approach is to advocate for yourself and seek out quiet spaces when possible.
So maybe request a private office or find a secluded corner in a library or a coffee shop.
Exactly. It's about taking proactive steps to create a more conducive work environment.
But what about those situations where you can't physically escape the noise and distractions, like say you're in a meeting that feels overwhelming?
Well, in those cases, Kane suggests a technique she calls mental escape.
Oh, right, like that mental sanctuary we talked about earlier for public speaking.
Exactly. It's about finding something that brings you a sense of calm and peace. A happy memory, a favorite piece of art, anything that can help you create a mental buffer from the overstimulation.
It's like having a secret weapon in your back pocket.
In a way, it is.
Now let's shift gears a bit and talk about relationships. Kane explores the dynamics between introverts and extroverts and highlights some potential communication challenges.
Oh, yeah, those can be tricky.
Any advice for bridging those gaps?
Well, I think the most important thing is to understand and accept each other's communication styles.
Because they can be so different, right?
Exactly. Introverts often process information internally and need time to reflect before speaking, while extroverts tend to think out loud and enjoy bouncing ideas off others in real time.
So it's about respecting those different rhythms of communication.
Right, and it's also crucial to communicate your needs clearly.
Like if you need some quiet time after a social gathering, let your extroverted partner or friend know.
Exactly. And on the flip side, if you're an extrovert, try to give your introverted loved ones a heads up before springing any spontaneous outings on them.
It's all about finding a balance and being mindful of each other's needs.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, I want to touch on something that's particularly close to my heart, raising introverted children.
Hmm.
I think a lot of parents struggle with how to support kids who might not fit the mold of the outgoing social butterfly.
Oh, I hear you on that one. Kane dedicates a significant portion of the book to this topic, and one of the most important things she emphasizes is the importance of recognizing and accepting your child's temperament.
So don't try to force them to be someone they're not.
Exactly. It's about nurturing their innate strengths and celebrating their unique way of being in the world.
It's about helping them find their own path.
Precisely. Kane also offers practical advice for navigating school and social situations, like preparing them for new experiences by talking to them about what to expect and practicing social scripts.
So it's like giving them a little roadmap to help them feel more comfortable.
Right? Those little things can make a big difference.
What about those times when an introverted child seems withdrawn or isolated? How can parents support them without being overbearing?
Well, Kane stresses the importance of open communication and active listening. Encourage your child to share their feelings and validate their experiences. Let them know it's okay to feel differently and that their sensitivity is a strength, not a weakness.
It's about creating that safe and supportive environment where they can be themselves.
Exactly.
One of the recurring themes in the book is the danger of conforming to societal expectations rather than embracing your true nature.
Oh, absolutely. And this is particularly relevant for introverts who are often pressured to be more outgoing and assertive.
Yeah, it's like we're constantly being told that we need to be more like extroverts to succeed.
Right. But Kane challenges that notion and encourages readers to recognize and value their introverted strengths, their deep thinking, their empathy, their creativity.
It's about finding a way to balance your inner world with the demands of the outer world in a way that feels authentic.
And that brings us to one of the most fascinating parts of the book, Kane's exploration of how cultural values influence personality traits.
Yeah, she talks about how different cultures view introversion and extroversion.
Exactly. She contrasts Western emphasis on boldness and verbal skills with Eastern cultures that value quiet and humility.
It's like those fMRI studies she mentions, showing different brain responses to dominance poses between Americans and Japanese.
Right. It's a powerful reminder that what's considered normal in one culture might be viewed completely differently in another.
And that the extrovert ideal isn't some universal truth, but rather a product of specific cultural values.
Precisely, those values have evolved over time, shaped by social and economic forces.
She talks about the rise of the culture of personality in the early 20th century.
Right. Fueled by the growth of cities and the rise of mass media.
It's fascinating to see how those historical shifts has shaped our understanding of what it means to be successful and likable,
And it also raises questions about the potential downsides of the extrovert ideal.
especially when it comes to decision-making and risk-taking.
Kane explores how the emphasis on boldness and charisma can sometimes lead to recklessness.
And a failure to adequately consider potential risks.
She cites examples from the financial world, particularly the lead-up to the 2008 financial crisis.
So it's not just about individual personalities, but about the potential consequences for organizations and society as a whole.
Exactly. And this is where Kane's discussion of introverted strengths, like careful analysis and a willingness to speak up about potential problems, becomes even more important.
It's a reminder that we need diversity of thought and personality styles to make sound decisions.
And to avoid costly mistakes.
And that brings us back to Warren Buffett.
You, yes, the poster child for introverted success.
Cain highlights how Buffett's introverted qualities, his patience, his focus, his ability to tune out the noise, have been key to his remarkable success.
It's a powerful counter-narrative to the idea that you have to be loud and brash to make it in the business world.
It's about thinking differently, thinking deeply.
And staying true to your own style.
At the end of the day, Cain isn't arguing that introversion is superior to extroversion.
Not at all.
It's about recognizing and valuing both personality styles
Understanding their strengths and weaknesses.
and creating environments where both can thrive.
It's about embracing the full spectrum of human personality.
Well said. We've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive,
We have.
but I feel like we're just scratching the surface of this incredibly insightful book.
There's always more to explore.
But for now, let's shift our focus to you, the listener.
We'd love to hear your thoughts.
What are your takeaways from this conversation? What resonates most with you? What new insights have you gained about yourself or the introverts in your life?
Take a moment to reflect on these questions.
And consider how you can embrace the power of quiet in your own unique way.
Remember, there's no one right way to be an introvert.
Embrace your authentic self and celebrate the unique contributions you bring to the world.
Quiet can be a source of immense power and creativity.
Honor your need for solitude and never underestimate the value of your unique perspective.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into Quiet, the Power of Introverts.
We hope you found it enlightening and empowering.
Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning.
And keep embracing the quiet brilliance within you. So, we've talked a lot about the strengths of introverts and how they can thrive. But I think it's also important to acknowledge that it's not always easy being an introvert in an extrovert-dominated world.
Oh, absolutely. There are definitely challenges.
And one concept that Cain really emphasizes is this idea of free trade agreements.
Right, that we can choose to act out of character when it's in service of something we deeply care about.
And I think that's so empowering because it means we don't have to be limited by our temperament.
Exactly. We can stretch ourselves and step outside our comfort zones when it's truly important to us.
But it's also crucial to have those restorative niches, those spaces where we can recharge and come back to ourselves.
Oh, absolutely. Those are essential for introverts to thrive.
I was thinking about this in the context of the modern workplace with all the emphasis on open office plans and constant collaboration.
Yeah, that can be tough for introverts.
Because they often need more privacy and quiet to do their best work.
Cain makes a strong argument for creating more flexible workspaces that cater to a variety of needs and working styles.
So it's not just about accommodating introverts, but about creating an environment where everyone can be productive and happy.
Exactly. It's about recognizing that diversity of personality is a strength, not a weakness.
Now, before we wrap up, I wanted to touch on one more fascinating aspect of Cain's book.
Yeah.
Her exploration of how cultural values influence our perceptions of introversion and extroversion.
It's amazing how different cultures view these traits.
For example, she contrasts Western cultures that often prize boldness and self-promotion with Eastern cultures that value humility, quietude, and harmony.
It really challenges our assumptions about what's normal or desirable.
And it highlights the importance of cultural sensitivity and understanding. So I think one of the most valuable takeaways from Quiet is this message of embracing diversity.
Not just in terms of cultural backgrounds, but also in terms of personality styles.
Recognizing that both introverts and extroverts have unique strengths to offer.
And that a truly thriving society values and celebrates those differences.
Well said. So as we come to the end of this deep dive, I want to leave you with a few questions to ponder.
Okay.
What aspects of your own life might you want to re-examine or redesign in light of what you've learned about introversion?
Interesting question.
How can you create more space for those restorative niches in your daily routine?
And how can you contribute to a world that values the full spectrum of human personality?
These are questions worth considering.
They really are.
Remember, quiet can be a source of immense power and creativity.
Embrace your authentic self. Honor your need for solitude and never underestimate the value of your unique perspective.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the power of introversion.
It's been a pleasure exploring these ideas with you.
We hope you found it insightful and empowering. Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep embracing the quiet brilliance within you.